Um, Hello, students. It's Wednesday. We're going to finish the problems in this chapter. We're going to do a couple of additional problems today. But after we go over these problems today, we're going to be done with the chapter. And so on Friday, I'll answer any questions you have. We'll again do that by email. So please email me with your questions. On Friday, I would appreciate it. So, kind of where we left this off was last time we left it off with problem 29. And what we said is my amount realized was only 120,000, my basis was 25, and therefore I have a $25,000 loss. And I told you the losses on a like kind exchange are non-deductible, they're not recognized. Remember in our formula where we subtract the deferred gain? If there's a deferred loss, we would actually add the deferred loss in that fourth step. So anyway, so the way so in an involuntary conversion, I get to recognize losses. Now, in step 2 of our formula, my recognized gain, remember, is the lesser of my realized gain or my boot received. Well, in place of boot received, we're going to use this idea of how much money did I put in my pocket. Okay, and that's illustrated then with my change in facts. We sell it for $225. We get insurance proceeds at $225. Our basis is $125. Gives me a $100,000 gain. But I got $225, and I only reinvested $175. That makes it so I have a $50,000 of money that went in my pocket. And in the involuntary conversion context, this is the same as boot. So with those changed facts, I would have a $50,000 gain then that I would have to recognize. Okay? So that's 29. I want to pick up an additional problem to help you with like kind exchanges, and this is problem 25. And problem 25, like I told you yesterday, is a lot like the last problem I did when I lectured on this. So I'm going to set up two columns here, Oscar and Harriet, in steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. So Oscar, 120 fair market value versus 40 adjusted basis gives me an $80,000 realized gain. Now here, there's a couple of things that we now need to do with this. Oscar now gets rid of $18,000 more of mortgage. Okay? So this would be considered boot. But remember, if I paid cash, I get to reduce this boot number by the amount of cash then that I paid. Now, so we have to determine what's the net equity that Oscar has, and the net equity Oscar has is the 120 minus the 70 or $50,000. The net equity that Harriet has is $60,000. That is the 112 minus the 52. Is that right? 50, 60, $60,000. It's Harriet's net equity. So because Harriet's net equity is 60 and Oscar's net equity is only 50, Oscar's got to pay Harriet $10,000. Okay, so Oscar pays Harriet $10,000. Okay, so Oscar's then recognized gain is the $18,000 of mortgage that he excess mortgage that he transferred to Harriet, less the $10,000 in cash that he paid. So Oscar's recognized gain is $8,000. So his deferred gain is 72. And then we take the 112 minus the 72. That gives us $40,000 basis in the new property. And again, that is no coincidence. That's how it should be. Now we look at Harriet. Harriet has a realized gain of 57. That is the 112 minus the 55 adjusted basis. Now Harriet's recognized gain, because Harriet received $10,000 cash. Remember, in the offset of the mortgage and the offset of the cash, Harriet gave up more than she got, or she got more than she gave up. But she received cash. And remember, the final rule I told you was that if I receive cash, I have to recognize gain to the extent that I receive cash. So Harriet's going to recognize $10,000 of gain. Going to be $47,000. Then this my deferred gain. And then the 112 minus the 47 gives me 73. Now you're probably wondering, hey, Professor Pyre, where did we get that 73 from? Well, it's pretty easy. It is the 55 adjusted basis plus this $18,000 mortgage, additional mortgage that they took on, and that gives me then my 73,000. All right, if you can do problem 25, I can't give you a problem harder than problem 25. All right. Let's talk about involuntary conversions. In order to qualify for gain deferral under the involuntary conversion provisions, I have to acquire new property that is of the same functional use. It's called the functional use test. Functional use test. So my new property has to have the same functional use as my old property. Okay? So, insurance proceeds from a warehouse destroyed by a fire used to purchase a manufacturing plant. The warehouse and the plant are both used in the taxpayer's manufacturing business. But a warehouse does not have the same functional use as a manufacturing plant. So 27A does not qualify, and we'll have to recognize the entire gain. Assume the same facts in Part A, except the warehouse is held as an investment to be rented out to a business, and the plant was also rented out. Here, this would be of the same functional use, a rental. So Part B, it would qualify. An office building used in a trade or business is condemned. Proceeds are used to buy an apartment complex. There is one exception to the functional use test, and that's illustrated now in Part C. And that exception to the functional use test is that if I have real property that's condemned, it only applies in the case of a condemnation, and it's condemned, then it's a like-kind test and not a functional use test. And so as we talked about before, when we talked about like-kind exchanges, this would be trade or business, for investment property, and therefore it would qualify as a like-kind exchange, and therefore this would be qualifying replacement property. In Part D, we lost a crane and we buy a fleet of forklifts, different functional use and therefore does not qualify. An antique vase is stolen, and the insurance proceeds are used to buy a painting that is hung in the same lobby. This would be the same functional use, that is decorations, and therefore it would qualify. Let me talk about what we mean by condemnation and what your book talks about condemnation. The Constitution of the United States states that government can't come in and take your property for a public use without just compensation. And the way they do that is they do a condemnation. And they come in, they say, we're going to take your property for a public use, and they give you allegedly fair market value for your property. Now, let me give you an example of this. If any of you are Dodger fans, you know that, or listen to Dodger baseball, you know that Dodger Stadium is located in a place that was once called Chavez Ravine. And the reason it was called Chavez Ravine is because it was a home of migrant farm workers, and their leader was Chavez. Well, when the Brooklyn Dodgers decided to move to LA, yes, the Dodgers used to be in Brooklyn. When they decided to move to LA, they said, we'll move to LA, but we want our own stadium. So, the fathers of LA went out and found this piece of property, Chavez Ravine, where they could build a stadium. And they went and condemned it. That is, as they went to all those people and said, we want your property, give us your property. And they were forced to give up their property for Dodger Stadium. That's what we mean by condemnation. When we're talking about condemnation in this context, we don't mean that this piece of property is uninhabitable. What we're talking about is this property is being taken for a public purpose for the government. All right, that's 27. 29 we've done. I want to add two additional problems here, 32 and 34. And 32 and 34 illustrate the basic scenarios that can happen here. So, factory on an adjusted basis of 375 receives 540,000. That is 0, 0, 0. $165,000 is my realized gain. Now, to come up with my recognized gain, we then have, well, let's just talk about B. So in my recognized gain for Part B, I reinvest $590,000. I invested $50,000 more than the proceeds that I got. So my deferred gain is going to be this 165 because I'm not going to recognize any of it. It's my deferred gain. That is step 3, and step 4 then is going to be my 590 minus my 165, and that is going to be 425, or 375 plus the new money I put in of $50,000 is 425. Okay, so that is B. Obviously in A, the entire 165 would be recognized. Okay, part C. Again, I got 540. I only invested 480. That gives me let's see, $60,000 that was not reinvested. So this is the gain I have to recognize. So 165 minus 60 gives me my deferred gain of 105. So 480 minus my 105 gives me 375. And it is no coincidence that that is my basis now in my old property. Okay, next 350. Here's kind of a little trap. If we take 540 minus my 350 gives me 190,000 of proceeds that were not reinvested, but my gain realized is only 165, so my recognized gain is only going to be 165. That's what I'm going to recognize, and my basis in my new property is going to be 350 because I have no deferred gain. Okay? All right, 34. We have this sailboat. Okay, I'm going to try it this way. Insurance proceeds, adjusted basis, and reinvestment. So part A is my insurance proceeds were 50,000. My adjusted basis was 18, but I only reinvested 48. Okay, so number one, realized gain 32. Recognized gain, I did not reinvest $2,000, so my recognized gain is $2,000. My deferred gain is 30. And my basis now in my new property is 18. And again, it is no coincidence that that is the same basis I had up here. Okay? B. 136. 75. And 150. Okay, let's see. 50 would be 125. So 61. So in part one, my realized gain is 61. My recognized gain is 0 because I reinvested $14,000 more. So my recognized gain is 0. I didn't put any money in my pocket because I took all the proceeds and actually put more into it. My deferred gain is 61. And my basis in my new property then is 89. An alternative way we could do this is we could take my old basis of 75 plus the $14,000 of new money to come up with also 89. Okay? C. Speedboat. 82. 102 and 95. This one's easy because there's a loss here of $20,000. That gives me a $20,000 loss. Remember, under an involuntary conversion, I can recognize losses. So I'm going to recognize this $20,000 loss. There's nothing deferred. Nothing. 20,000 is going to be recognized. Nothing deferred, and my basis then is going to be my 95,000. And finally, D. Insurance proceeds 142. Adjusted basis 112. Reinvestment of 80. My realized gain is $30,000. My recognized gain is 62, the lesser of 62, the amount not reinvested, or my realized gain of 30, so that's going to be 30. Nothing deferred, and so my basis in my new asset then is going to be this amount of $80,000. All right, students, thanks for hanging in there. Let's see if we can take some questions on Friday. Let's try to do it during class time. 2 to 3 on Friday. And just email questions and make sure to email everyone, and we'll go through that. I'll also send out an email that talks about the final. And with that in mind, I think I'm going to call that good for Intro to Tax. If you have any questions, please email me, and talk to you later. Thank you. Bye.